Okay, so let's get right. Waiting for the moth to go by. Okay, so let's get right into it and burn out the drum. So we burned out the drum. That was step number one, is get all the harmful chemicals, paint off of your drum so we have a good foundation to begin with. Okay, so the next step is to clean off basically this soot. As you can see here, it's just really a light powder. It's all over the outside. The inside is not as much of a concern since we're not going to be painting the inside. Just a nice wipe down. What I like to do anytime I work with metal, I like to use mineral spirits. It's a good cleaner for steel. So you can get yourself like a Scotch-Brite, I call them Scotty pads, you know, the green pads. And by using the Scotty pad, what that will also help you is in the event there's still any kind of maybe flakiness, some paint that maybe didn't fully burn, this will help you to knock it all down so it's good and clean. Now the outside, we'll use either brush or a wire wheel of some sort. A good little kit you can get yourself from Harbor Freight, as I've got here. This one's a full-on set. It's got two different cup brushes. This one's got more of the braided knots on there, just like these two. These are even good for knocking down welds or the slag that's left from behind welding. But as I'm going to try to approach this drum build so that somebody with limited tools can do it, obviously this requires a 4.5-inch grinder, if you will. Now they do have brush attachments for drills if you want to do that. You don't have a grinder, don't want to buy one, and you do have a cordless drill or a standard drill, you can buy a wire wheel or good old manual standby. You can get a scrub brush. It's going to take you a little bit longer, a lot longer. The outside you want to get exceptionally clean because we are going to paint it. So with that, then we move on to then what the next step would be is I'm going to have to break this down a little bit further. As you see, I've still got some pipes and I've already drilled all my holes. Since this is a part-way project, as I stated, I've done pretty much everything that needs to be done. I just need to clean the drum and then I can start building it. Well, as you notice here, I've got a series of holes and I'm utilizing these U-bolts. And these are going to go on the inside, bolted from outside, and these are what's going to hold your rack in place, as I stated in the previous video, but if you haven't seen it, this is a bit of a recap. So, basically, two sets of holes. The first one is at 4 inches, and that's from the top lip. You take this lid off from the lip down, 4 inches, I drill a pair of holes, and then at 12 inches, from the top down to 12, I drill again. And these particular ones, I think I got at Home Depot. Let's see, they're 1/4 inch by 2 inch, you know. As I stated before, use stainless steel if you can. If not, use whatever. Just don't use anything galvanized. So with that, then we would go on further to drilling holes for the pipe. And the pipe, as well as the little, I don't know what you want to call that, extra air inlet at the bottom. Those are both 2 inches up from the bottom. And everything is symmetrical. What I didn't mention about the U-bolt is I did it in a triangle pattern, because if you have 3 points, no matter how off they are, your tray will still sit level. There won't be any wobbling. When you do the bottom holes, get yourself one of those step bits. That works perfect for those kind of holes. Okay, so we got the drum cleaned inside. I went over with the wire wheel on the outside, as you can tell. And one thing I want to point out is, still wearing my goggles, aren't I? Once you prep this outside, as in the case the way I did it with the wire wheel, and you've got so much raw steel here, you're going to need to paint it right away. So make sure you plan for that. And my paints that I'm going to use are, well, let me get them and show you. Give me a second. Okay. Look, I used to, oh God, excuse me. Ooh, that pizza's coming back to haunt me. Okay. So I've decided to use high heat engine paint. Now, I had always been with the understanding that engine paint's not a good choice for barbecue projects. And what I'm realizing is, after I thought about it, I'm looking at this, it says, well, it's good for 500 degrees. This one says it can go up to 650 Fahrenheit. Well, on this type of a cooker, I myself will never have this thing go above 220. That's my ideal temperature. Well, then I don't see why a paint that's rated at 500, I'm not even going to hit half of its temperature capacity. So that's what I'm going with. And not only that, they actually make a primer, a high heat primer, and the main body color is going to be this burnt orange color, and all of the pipes and accessories I'm going to have in this like gunmetal gray type color. So let me get at least the primer on right now so that it doesn't rust. Try this a third time. So as luck would have it, as I was primering the drum and I got to the lid, I realized I'm supposed to be putting hinges on this lid. In my case, you know, I have access to a welder, and I've made some custom hinges of my own so I need to mount on here. So before I go any further, I'm going to get my hinges mounted, and then I can finish up the primering and go on to the next step. Now, unfortunately, if you don't have access to a welder, I don't really know of too many solutions where you could bolt on a hinge setup that would work. What many people I've seen do, or many people have done that I've seen, is they'll put like a hook of some type on the underside of the lid. So when you take it off, you can kind of hook it right here onto the lip of the drum. That would be a nice touch, so that then you don't have to just take the lid and throw it on the ground or put it on the side. It'll still be attached to the drum. That'd be a good idea. And let me bring you in to show you the little hinge setup and how I'm doing that. Okay, so I want to give you an overview of the hinges I've created. I was pretty fortunate. I came across a whole bunch of these washers. And so what I did is, making some cardboard templates, we came up with a design that suits this drum perfectly. And they're not just simply cut in half. One of these is directly in half, but one's a little bit shorter. I've got a template, and I will provide that in the links below. This happens to be, I measured it, it's a 3-inch washer. I'm not sure if that's just all you would call it, a 3-inch washer. This opening, it was about 1 3/8 of an opening. I don't know how relevant that is, but it is a 3-inch washer. Pretty thick too. I'd say that's 1/8 of an inch thick. So I made my template, and what I was trying to achieve with this hinge is, I want this lid to lift up a slight bit and then come back, because it needs to clear right here. You can't just pivot, because this lip right here will be binding in. Now, if that becomes an issue, you could cut away part of this, and I may have to do that. We won't know until once I get these hinges on and we start testing it. We'll see where maybe I can just make an adjustment, like I said, where I cut part of a lip, and that might be all that's necessary, just so that you only have the flat touching rather than the back, and it could be fine. Another idea I had, if there becomes an issue, and I'm already kind of expecting possibly an issue, is to drill these holes out larger, but still use this 1/4-inch bolt, so that there's a lot of slop in these hinges. And that should definitely kind of make it like an extendable hinge. So as I'm lifting, it can kind of pop up and then pivot. And that would be excellent as well. So I may just do that anyways, but we'll try it the way I've designed it and see how that works, and we go from there. Of course, that's the beauty of problem solving. Oh, and the one tip that's actually pretty important. I'm not going to be welding these probably the proper way, as I would like to say. If you're going to do hinges like this, you need them to be parallel. A great tip is, well, here you can't really see it, is you would get one bolt that will wide enough to span both of these hinges, and you'd run through here, through both hinges. And what that will allow you to do is lock these hinges parallel in two different planes, meaning forward, back, up and down, side to side. I mean, actually, I guess you got like 3 different planes that they'd be perfectly square to each other, to wherever you're placing them. That really is the way you should be doing it. However, I don't have a bolt long enough, and I don't feel like going and buying one just for this purpose. I do, however, have this block. So what I'm planning on doing is I'm just going to clamp to this block. So at least I know I've got them square and one in, a couple different directions. And I'll just do my best to get these positioned in the exact same spot as I tack them down. And I think it'll be just fine. Like I said, I'm going to make these hinges loose. So even if it's not perfect, it should be able to compensate by having a looser hinge. So let's clean up the areas that need to be welded, and we'll try it out. Okay, so I apologize for the shaky vlog style. So I'm having a hard time figuring out how to record this segment. So I'm at a point where I was trying to decide what kind of a handle I wanted to make. And nothing really popped into my head until I started thinking about my favorite go-to in these darn giant 3-inch washers. So what I've decided to do is I've measured out a spacing I'm going to cut a notch into the washer that'll overlap on each side here. And what that'll do is it'll push the washer out a little bit, and I'm going to add a spring handle in between the spacing here. And then that way your hand will be out and away, so that even as you lift up, your handle will be clear of the lid at all times, because this lid's going to get pretty darn hot. So you definitely don't want to touch it if you can avoid it. So over here I've got set up the washer, and you can see right here I've got it marked. I'm going to cut out a notch right here, and we'll hope that works. And then after that I'll drill a hole over on the side where a rod will go through, and then the spring handle will go on that. Okay, so let me get that finished.